Hello and welcome to another episode of the Podium Podcast. I'm Simon Hartley.
And I'm Tom May.
And over the years, I've heard hundreds, if not thousands of people talking about the value of applying sports thinking into business. And I think it's a great idea. I genuinely do. But I want to know how. I want to know what works and what doesn't work. So during the course of these shows, we're going to talk to people who have made that transition and are now applying their own performance mindset into business. Today, we are joined by a rugby league icon, former St Helens and Great Britain star Paul Sculthorpe. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, Simon. Great to be here.
Icon.
See, I called John Wilkin a legend and he didn't like it, so I changed it to icon. Paul, when people read the headlines, they'll read Great Britain, they'll read Grand Finals and Man of Steel and all of that sort of stuff. But for you, where did it start?
It first started for me as a rugby league player back in Oldham. I was 8 years old. There was a new rugby team starting, a team called Royton Tigers. My younger brother Danny wanted to go along, and I got told against my will, you're going with him. I was actually following my eldest brother Lee, wanted to be a Premier League footballer. Loved the soccer. I went along to this training session pretty much because he had no choice, and thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I took to it pretty well, and probably being the middle of three brothers as well, I'd spent my childhood, you know, fighting and wrestling, and rugby league just worked. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Brilliant. I completely get that it's fighting and wrestling with a ball, which is, most little boys' dream, isn't it? You know, just you can get muddy, you can do some fighting, rolling around, and we throw a ball in as well. Were you naturally talented as a kid? Did you just find it easy? Were you always kind of top of the class, as it were?
I've always been pretty decent at sport. As I say, being one of three brothers, that's all we ever did was kick a ball or swing a golf club, swing a cricket bat. So I think, and I always think that's a big thing on you know, you speak to a lot of sportsmen who've done well, and they've played multi-sports as well. So I think it's that hand-eye coordination as a young kid, and yeah, I've always been pretty coordinated with the sports, and thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, it's been a massive part of my life growing up, and you know, been very, very fortunate to go on and you know, play sport for a living.
It seems to me that a lot of that's disappearing. That sort of focus on multi-sports, getting involved in all sorts of different sports. I know we've spoken about it before. What message would you give to parents that might be listening to this about the importance of making sure that, you know, their daughter or their son plays basketball or plays football or hockey, whatever it might be, because they all build internal motor skills, don't they, that eventually develop you as a sportsman?
Yeah, they certainly do. You know, I think if you've any ambitions of making it in sport, to do that and do the multi-sports, you know, do different things that, as you said, that you know, instigate different things, you know, within your skill sets, and I think we're suffering from it, to be honest. In you know, I see it from a rugby league point of view. You know, you speak to people in rugby union, you speak to people in football, and some of the talent pools that are coming through or not coming through. And I think probably that is a look on society as well of the way kids do play now. Some of it, you know, is a safety, child welfare thing, but some, you know, they're sat in their bedrooms playing on Xboxes and not out, you know, playing football on the street or rugby or, you know, on a field swinging a golf club or climbing a tree. You know, and it's them movement skills that I think we've certainly lacked, and you know, you do worry in regards of top line sports, of, you know, that next generation coming through.
Yeah. Did you always dream of being a rugby league player when you were a kid? Or a professional?
Up until being a footballer, but yeah, I mean, I'd set me goals. I've always been competitive, and I think that's probably the standout thing. I've always been really, really competitive. So when I got into rugby, you know, I started at 8. You know, I captained Greater Manchester youth team at 9 years old, and that was kind of, you know, taking that leadership role, that, you know, being a decent player from a very young age, and as I say, I've always wanted to be the best at whatever I do and win whatever I do, and I think that pretty much coming straight away from being a young kid and progressed all the way through the ranks, that every team that I've played in has been pretty much that focus.
Do you think this one is a bit out there? Might provoke a few comments. This one. So the whole thing about children not winning I can see. Okay, this is going to go.
You've got my feelings on it straight away. I just think it's absolutely. I mean that thing of taking away competitiveness in school sports day, and I think is absolutely pathetic.
Surely that's what sets us up for later life, right? Whether you make it as a sports person or not, you've got to have that
incentive to win. You've got to win, but you've got to learn to lose as well. And that's the thing is, this everybody's a winner, and well, it's not, and that's not the case. And I was so against that. And as I said, because there's life skills in winning and losing, and sport is a big part of that. And to take that away is, we wonder why some people struggle in life.
Yeah. I see. Even my own lads under 12 team, when they get beat, they don't quite know how to deal with it, and it's like, guys, you can't be winning by 20-30 points every week. You have to learn. The only way you're going to learn and progress in life or develop your skills, no matter whatever context it might be, comes from the hard times, right?
Yeah, and I just think, what's the old saying? I mean, the old saying, you either win or you learn. Building that resilience of losing, and having to then work for something to improve, to try and win again. And I think taking away that competition is it's not acceptable, and it's great to see that it's back. I think we learned very quickly that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many challenges when you're playing. I know. I mean, losing's one of them. The other thing that people kind of get duped into, I think, is they'd look at the headlines. They'd look at the fact that you played for Great Britain and you've won trophies and World Club Championships and all that sort of stuff, and they'd say, it must have been kind of easy then, because there aren't any challenges in the headlines. But I'm sure you experienced them. What were the really big challenges that you experienced as you were playing?
I mean, the big challenge is to obviously to get to the level that you want to be at, or to play for Great Britain, or to be successful with your club side is the hard work that you put in day out. When you run up the hills in pre-season, on an early January morning, that's no fun. But that's the things that get you to where you want to be. And also, I got it at the back end of my career. For a player, and Tom will tell you, the worst times are when you're injured and you can't go out there with your teammates and do what you enjoy doing. We all started playing this game because we love it. So to not to be able to do that and feel like you're letting people down by not being out there on the park, but it's a very, very lonely place when you're injured and not able to do your own job, and it's very frustrating. But it's about having that mindset, that resilience to work hard and get yourselves back. And that was something that I always kind of thrived off. As lonely as it was in the gym, I love that challenge of, I want to get back, and I'm going to do everything I can.
Yeah, I think that those challenging times often are the ones that make us stronger. That we were chatting to a former baseball pitcher who also described how he saw kind of sport as almost like entrepreneurship. And I had a conversation earlier with a friend of mine who described sport as physical problem solving. Did you, when you were going through your career, did you have multiple times where you were just encountering problem after problem after problem that needed solving?
I mean, I was very lucky in regards to winning. I was always part of a great side. I moved to St Helens in 1998, and probably the most successful team over that decade that I played. So that probably wasn't the challenge. Probably the biggest challenge in that is sustaining that and being consistent all the way through. As I said, the challenge for me was probably back end of my career through those times of injury, and that was the real frustrating thing, and probably, you know, why I ended up retiring when I did, making that decision to do that, because I couldn't do any more. I couldn't do any more than what I'd give. You know, I was training, I was as fit as I could be, and it was little things that obviously it's maybe it was a case, and I accepted it, of saying, you know, I was only 31 when I retired, but I'd started first grade at 16. So the number of games that I've played, you know, I'd played. I remember playing with one of the Australian guys, and I think he retired at 36, and I'd played something like 150 more games than him in my career. And it was just a case of, you know, maybe your body's telling you, you know, you shouldn't do this anymore, and that they're tough times. They're tough times, and as I say, it wasn't for the sake of not putting the work in. That's the bit that I really thrived off, and probably I always say, you know, people say, oh, do you miss playing now? I don't miss playing. I don't miss playing one bit. What I would miss if I couldn't do anything would be the training side of it. I love the physical challenge of training day in, day out, and pushing yourself to that limit. And maybe it's something that I don't have to do now, but I still do. I only see there's one way of training, and that's with intensity to improve.
Have you taken that intensity to obviously know a bit about what you're up to now, but you know, do you take that intensity into your sort of working life now?
Yeah, definitely. Probably do find it hard to switch off. I'm always looking, checking, you know, doing different things, and because I want everything to work, you know, I want to be successful in everything that I do. I don't want to leave anything, you know, stone unturned. And I know you should switch off, and certainly when you know when you're at home with family and things, and that's probably one of my downfalls. But it's also probably one of the things that, you know, why I've had some of the successes in work life after playing.
So how did you?
I had the same conversation this afternoon with Becky, my wife, and it's really difficult, I find, in terms of just being able to turn off. Like, as a sports person, you can never turn off. So, you know, for 20 years, I had it drilled into me, right, you're never off. So now it's like, well, everyone's telling you to turn off, and it is difficult, it is hard, and sometimes I end up feeling guilty that I can't. And I think that's for me, that's one of the harder things to manage, you know, in this sort of post-career period is right. What is switching off? How do you do it? And how do you actually? It's you know, putting this thing down is the hardest thing. You know, it sort of follows you around, doesn't it? And it's just difficult to do. But if we can find a way to do it, then it's certainly a benefit to us all.
Yeah, absolutely. But Paul, how did you get into business? Was it a case of finishing your career and then looking for something else, or had you already started before you finished playing?
I'd already started, you know, doing bits of business while I was playing. It's always something I've been interested in, and I think being in the position that I was in, being a captain, you know, doing a bit of media work, I've always enjoyed meeting people. I've always enjoyed networking, and opened up opportunities, you know, as I've gone along with it within my career, and then obviously I had a few commercial deals. One of them being Gillette. I had a deal with Gillette for a number of years in the early 2000s, and the sales director there at Gillette, we became good friends, and he later became chief exec at St Helens, and we went into business together. So I kind of had that running parallel with my playing career, and then obviously it was an easy, pretty much transition then into business life, which part of that was still involved in the game, you know, be it on a commercial ambassadorial role at Saints, and then doing my own things with outside of rugby.
Yeah, you've got quite broad, diverse group of sort of business interests now, by the looks of it. Can you tell us a little bit about the businesses and where the sort of the spark came from that brought you into them?
Yeah, so well, I'm a director, so co-owner of Evolve Brand Sport. So we have a license manufacturing, merchandising. We work with a number of brands, governing bodies. We did have a license sort of events company, which we did a lot with, again with governing bodies. So we used to work with the likes of British Cycling, obviously the Rugby League World Cup. That kind of fell off a cliff at the start of COVID. We had a number of events, obviously mass participation events it was. So we used to do the branding and a lot of the experiential stuff for that. So we kind of diversed away from that and went more into the manufacturing and merchandising. So we work with a number of brands, and Rugby League World Cup being one of those. Mm-hmm. I own co-owner of Rhino Rugby League, which is obviously a well-renowned brand in rugby, which obviously is going fantastic. So we do a lot of work within the pro game and the community game as well. And then I have a few ambassadorial roles. One with a company called Board RM, who are a job board based in Birmingham. So they're into obviously recruitment. I met those guys in 2020. Their involvement within Rugby League and now are partners with both St Helens and Leeds Rhinos. And also work with a company based in Leeds, Workforce Recruitment, who into haulage, so driver recruitment, and also BD consultancy who supply third party haulaging. So it's quite diverse, and alongside that is obviously my role. So I'm contracted 4 days a week within the RFL with England, and working a bit on the commercial team as well there. I've always enjoyed that side of meeting businesses, networking, and not knowing really what's around the corner, and kind of took that into part of the role within the commercial team at the RFL. So again, and still doing a bit of media within the game. So it's quite diverse, but no week's the same. But it's certainly enjoyable.
Simon, there's a lot of sports people that go into business development, and a lot of those roles would be, I guess, part of those roles would be in finding solutions to problems that businesses might have, through the network that sports people might have. Do you think that ability to find solutions to problems or creativity comes from that individual's background in sport, or why is there such a strong leaning towards business development within those that come out of sport?
Yeah,
I think there's. Go on, sorry, Sam.
I was going to say I'd love to get Paul's thoughts on this one as well. Yeah, I think there are so many possible reasons that sports people could be really successful. I mean, one of them, as Paul's already been mentioning, it tends to be really competitive, and I think it lends itself well to people who have got a real competitive spirit. I think there's also that element of some people get stuck in a rut and they need some fresh thinking, but some people can get daunted by the challenges. And lots of sports people that I know would look at a challenge and think, that's not impossible, I just need to find a way to do it, because that's what they did when they were playing, and competing. So I think there's all sorts of bits of an athletic mindset that can lend into it. But yeah, be really interested to know what Paul thinks on this one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that one of the biggest things is there's no shortcut to success. I think the work ethic of somebody who's grown up in sport or made it to the top of the game in sport, there is no shortcuts to that. So I think that's one of the biggest things is the dedication to being successful. Maybe the goal setting, and then following them tasks that will get you there. So I think I know we spoke about it before, Tom. Of professional sports people going into businesses just some of the cultures that they've grown up with.
Yeah, there's I think a tendency for sports people to almost just think, let's give it a go. Even if I don't know how to do it yet, let's just give it a go, because they've conquered all sorts of stuff through their sporting life. And Tom and I, we've already talked about athletes who, because they've learned how to lose as well, they've probably got less fear of failure. They're willing to say, I will give this a go. Somehow I'll find a way. And I think that's hugely valuable in lots of roles within business, but I suspect probably in business development and sales type roles, and leadership roles, project leadership roles, those sorts of things, it can be really valuable.
I don't think you've really got a choice, apart from to roll the dice when you're playing sport. Like you're either going for the top or you're at the bottom of the pool. So what choice do you have? And I wonder whether if you don't come from a sporting background and you're within that sort of corporate and business world, whether maybe you roll the dice as much and say, yeah, I'll do that, because most people that I know that have come from sport say yes and then have got no idea about how they're going to do it at all. They just think, right, I'll just make it happen somehow. And I guess it's that risk versus confidence and internal belief. Those traits that you have to survive within sport. Just survive within a changing room is hard enough. I guess that comes to the fore.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big one there is what you say. One of them traits is that winning mentality of, being a sportsman. Just because you're no longer on the field there, you go into the business world. You've grown up wanting to win everything that you do. That's why you play sport. It's why you play professional sport, is to be successful. And I think, and that's certainly been my case, is I want to win. I want to do well at everything that I do, be it sport or business. And I think maybe in the corporate world that could be a very different thing, and where somebody coming from a sporting background could add that killer instinct.
Unless you're coming into a PE lesson where no one wins.
yeah, correct.
When we're looking at, we're talking about your really diverse businesses, there must be some really common elements to all of these that you can contribute to. So where do you find yourself having the biggest impact? Because you're not a specialist, I guess, in recruitment or in haulage or in any other area, but you can still make a real impact in them.
Yeah. Do you know what my biggest one is just people skills, and I think that's been a big part of growing up as a captain, maybe into the coaching role, of getting the best out of people who are around you, and certainly I find it very easy meeting new people, getting on with people, building relationships, talking to people, and pretty much just be yourself. And if there's opportunities there, and people do business with people. There's a lot of people give the same service, but they'd rather do probably somebody they like, somebody they've got a relationship with, somebody they trust. And that for me is, I don't pretend to have any superior knowledge on some of the things that I do, but what I can do is connect people, just by being myself. Either Paul, the rugby player, who sometimes it obviously it can open a door for you, and you can get indoors that other people can't. But just being yourself and getting to know people, which is something that I really enjoy.
Tom and I have kind of reflected on how in a team situation you have to inherently trust those around you, and I think in order to do that you've also got to know how to be trustworthy so that your teammates trust you. And I suspect it's one of those kind of almost invisible skills, if you know what I mean, that you learn through sport, is to be somebody that others would trust. And therefore be able to develop deeper kind of relationships, more meaningful relationships, which naturally would transfer into the business world as well as the dressing room.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was always, it's a question you get asked a lot. Well, what made you successful at St Helens as a club? Over that period of time. And I always said the biggest one was the culture within the club, the people we signed. The culture within that we built, and trust was a big part of that. Players got on. Often it can only take one bad egg to upset a dressing room, and we never had that. One of our biggest parts in signing players was what are them people like off the field. We know what players are like on the field. It's a small world, and you know good players. Are they the right people for the environment? And that was a big one. And again, that is something that I think I took over to the business, the businesses that I'm involved with. In building relationships and building trust with those that you're working with.
Yeah. Is there anything that you felt completely unprepared for in business? Something that's took you so far outside of your comfort zone?
No, because I don't think so. Because if I don't know the answer, I'll be honest, and I'll put you in touch with somebody who does. And again, that's being honest, and again, it's not a bad trait to have that people can see that. So I think they know they can trust you. You're not making things up. And again, my biggest part of mine, certainly on the ambassadorial stuff, and I work with a company as well, Corpay, who are foreign exchange experts, and I have no pretense to know some of the things that they offer, but I'll gladly pass them on to somebody that does. So and again, it's just building relationships and working with people.
I think also it's an ability to see opportunities, isn't it? That perhaps people within business, they're so concentrated and focused on what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Someone that's coming at the business from a bit of a skew-if angle that might not have a complete understanding about the industry or whatever it is they're dealing with, actually is prepared to ask some daft questions and actually pose some questions back to those that are running the business on a day-to-day basis. Why have you always done it like that? Why?
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. The times that I have asked that question, you get some pretty strange answers, and there's most of the time there's a bit of a shrug and go, well, that's just how we have done it.
Yeah. I think that's part of it, of being a sports person as well. There is no blueprint. Like I say, every day is different. You're throwing challenges from all over the place, and when you go into a business with a new set of eyes, and you ask them questions that probably other people have never done, and no doubt that's instigated some thoughts on their side. Where we're constantly challenging ourselves. As sports people, and I think going into a different environment, you can set them traits with you.
I mean, you mentioned that, as most people know, there are lots of businesses that got challenged through COVID and lockdown. How did you particularly solve the problems that came along with lockdown and COVID?
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, certainly on one side of our business, which was events, mass participation events, which literally got wiped out within the first month of lockdown. We had another side of the business, and then it's looking to adapt of things that you could do within that time, and we were quite lucky that the way our business works as well, we could literally freeze things until the time came, and then probably one of those who, when everything opened up, benefited from a boom of everybody wants to whatever our product was, and ours is obviously, it was in the rugby sector. When amateur teams went back playing, everybody wanted new kits, everybody wanted new team wear and balls and equipment, and everybody wanted it there and then. So yeah, it was a tough time. I won't lie, but thankfully we're through it and thriving.
Brilliant. Is there anything that you've learned from business, from your experiences of working with businesses and in businesses, that you've applied back into your own coaching now, or that you would apply if you're working with players, or probably would have applied in your playing life if you could rewind the clock?
I think again, a big one for me is just people skills. Certainly, that's something that I've always tried taking into both coaching and business, in the way that you speak to people, where you try and inspire people, and you're honest, and both criticism and praise, but be constructive. I think nobody makes mistakes on purpose. Be it on the rugby field or be it in the business world. Try and help them not to do it again. And I think that's probably been one of my biggest ones. Is I see it, and again it's come through, being a captain throughout those years of trying to inspire people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bizarrely, it sounds obvious, and it's that kind of stuff that you listen to it and you think, yeah, I knew that already. That sounds obvious, but it's actually really rare. It's rare that people get this stuff right. And as you said, you played for a team that dominated Super League for years. The other teams probably knew that as well, but they probably weren't doing it quite as well.
Yes, yeah. And do you know what, Simon? I look at a lot of things, in sport and business, and I'm very one who's very, half of it is common sense. I think there's a lot of people overcomplicate things. I'm very much, I look at things in black and white. Both rugby, coaching, the way I coach and the way the game's played. I think there's a lot of coaches overcoach for the sake of overcoaching.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people in business who try and baffle people with science. Sometimes you can simplify things and be far more constructive and successful.
But it comes down to communication, doesn't it? And something that's another thing that we've spoken about on this podcast, is that actually the way that you speak to team members or people within your departments with at work can have a massive difference on the efficiency of that particular department or partnership on a field, whatever it might be. And by overcomplicating it, you're not making it easy for anyone, including yourself. So I think there is an element of that and I've mentioned it before. I do think when sports people go into the corporate world, I think there's an opportunity for the sports person to be kicked up the arse, but because they're not quite up to speed with the corporate lingo. But actually, once you gain a bit more trust with those individuals, and you gain a bit more respect from them, then suddenly that language disappears.
Yeah, definitely. No, mate, I totally agree, and you see that, and when you do speak to, you said before, about asking them dumb questions, or you think of dumb questions going into an industry that you don't particularly know in detail, but ways that you can improve the way they do things, and you ask them questions, and again, sometimes you see the look on faces as if to say, why have we never thought of this? That's coming from our background of simplifying things and.
Yeah, no, I'm an absolutely huge advocate of plain English speaking, keeping things simple, saying what we really mean, all of that sort of stuff, because I do think it makes a massive, massive difference. And just understanding that the obvious stuff, as you say, the common sense stuff, we know it, that's fine, but we've actually got to do it and do it consistently for it to have any power. Those who do it consistently usually differentiate themselves from their competition significantly. Tom, you have some quick fire questions, my friend.
I do, yeah. Just to finish this podcast, or as we do with each of them, there's a series of quick fire questions. If you hadn't been a professional athlete, what would you have been? Is there another vocation that took your interest?
I was only 4 months into doing my A levels. I actually did all right at school, Tom. Would you believe it or not? I was doing PE and psychology at sixth form college.
No wonder you did all right. PE.
Yeah, it was going to be something in and around sport, and I was actually working towards being being a physiotherapist of all trades. It was always going to be something sport related, something that I was interested in. And again, the psychology thing, I've always been into that side of sport, the mental strength. So I was 4 months into that, and then that's when obviously Mr. Murdoch come in and Super League went full time.
There went those dreams. Who is the person you admire most in sport and in business?
Start off in business, I've always been a massive Richard Branson fan. Just, you talk about resilience. You look at the way he grew up and the things that he did and how successful he's been. Just sticking in there and you look at the empire that he built, and probably even more so because I got to meet the man. And go for dinner at his house when Ed talks with the London Broncos back in 1998. So he's always been somebody who
Broncos. You're just going for dinner.
I just went for the helicopter ride and the and the dinner at Holland Park. So he's always been a business icon, I think, and somebody who certainly I've looked up to. Sport, I always admire the people at the top of the game. I'll be honest. Your Tiger Woodses, your Cristiano Ronaldos, Ronnie O'Sullivans. Those who can come up with special moments, but consistently over a number of years, and it's kind of them people. You look and you watch. I watch sporting events. I watch a lot of sport, and there's a lot of people who shout for the underdog. I always want those guys to win. Those top dogs who have consistently done that. And probably them guys. One of my heroes was growing up. I've always been a massive boxing fan. Was Mike Tyson. He's obviously had his misdemeanors away from the boxing ring, but in the ring, probably the best boxer that I've ever seen in my lifetime. Anyway.
Good stuff. One of your deals comes off. You've got a load of funds to invest. What are you going to stick it in?
This is something that I'm always looking at. Always looking at investments and different business ideas. And that. I'm not into your NFTs and bitcoins and all. I just don't understand it fully enough.
Yeah.
I like stuff that you can see, that you can feel. I'm probably more a bricks and mortar man, and
yeah.
If anybody wants to invest, Evolve Brand Sport and Rhino Rugby League are always out there looking. So I throw a few quid back in that and build the empire.
Nice. You can only watch one film for the rest of your life. What would it be?
Oh God, I take stick off my son all the time. He's a proper film buff, and I'm just not a TV person. We're talking about switching off and not. I'm always on my laptop or my phone, and looking at different things. I'd rather skim through LinkedIn and look at opportunities than watching films. Probably not the best. So, I'd have to be. He always takes the mickey out of me. He always asks me, "Have you seen this film? Have you seen that?" No, I haven't yet. I'm not a film buff, and I always revert back to the old Rockies and Rambos and and them sorts of films. So but I like all the my kind of humour is probably all the Guy Ritchie films. Lock, Stock, and Snatch, and I watched The Gentleman and that the other week. I like them kind of movies. So I'd have to say probably a Guy Ritchie one.
Or back to back for the rest of your life. That's going to put you in a bit of a weird place. But
it'd be weird, wouldn't it? It would be weird. Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
Or at least you're not watching Love Island.
No.
Good stuff.
No.
Brilliant. I can absolutely see you as the kind of kid who gets muddy and climbs trees instead of plays computer games when you were a kid as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely an up on your feet, outdoorsy kind of person rather than. I wish I could relax more and sit on the sofa, but it's just not me.
No, absolutely. Brilliant. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Tom, thank you as always. Thank you guys for joining us as well. And we look forward to meeting you again on another episode of the Podium Podcast.